Okay, let's start. My name is Pedrazas. Today we're going to talk about why it's so hard to build a platform. We have 92 slides. There's a few animated GIFs, not enough cuts. Let's do it. Why it's so hard to build a platform? How many of you have tried to build a platform? Okay, 10%, 20%. So we can summarize it in these three things, like cognitive load, dependencies, and constraints. It's going to be something that we will see over and over in the talk. This is me talking about what I do. You are laughing. You will see that it's true. This is the agenda of today. We're going to talk a little bit of maths, a little bit of cooking. Don't know if you were in the keynote yesterday. Well, cooking is good. Coding, history, more maths. You get the gist. So, I joined Docker 18 months ago to do research about complexity. Why it's so hard to build software? And if you're familiar with that types of knowledge, in knowns and knowns and knowns and blah, 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 I have another one. You do not need to know to know. 18 months. Worth it. So, what do we do? Why do we want to do a platform? Platform simplifies things. What is it? At the end of the day, it's a set of interfaces that we want to use to simplify our things. That's great. This is an interface. Awesome. You want to fly a plane? You need this. Or you need this. Do you know what I'm talking about? Let's talk about coffee. Who knows how to do this operation? Raise your hand. You don't? Okay, let me show you that you are wrong. So this is the amount of coffee that I drink per week. Different types of coffee at different times of the day. And this is how much it costs. Folkestone is where I live. Shoreditch is London. Overpriced. This is how much I spend in coffee, right? Like these two tables. Number of coffees, price per coffee. We know how to do it, yeah? Yeah, do you know how to get this? Yes? This is what you do. What we're doing here is this operation. So you did know. It was me who was asking the wrong question. But at the end of the day, we have to wonder, like, do you really know what we have to do, really? And what is the issue with all these platforms and all this automation? You know, it's like, do the dishes, yes. But there's something else. It's just not doing the dishes, right? So, in my research, I end up doing this, defining what a component is. And it's very generic, right? It's like I would call it like, we have a runtime, we have configuration with dependencies and constraints, and metadata. Like this is a little bit more visual. I'm very visual. I don't write documents, I do diagrams. So, who can tell me where is the strawberry jam? This one? Okay. What about now? What about now? If you can read my handwriting, this is the strawberry jam, okay? We end up cooking using a bunch of conventions. What we do here when we build software, which is, let's go back, this thing, we don't have metadata. Our components don't have metadata. We don't bother. So we have to do all these conventions. We build software by conventions. That is the cognitive load of working in a new company. You have to learn how to work in a new company. So here we are, conventions. Let's talk about dinner. At what time do you have to have dinner? If we have to agree on having dinner at a certain time, what's going to happen? You can say, okay, look, I have dinner usually at 7. Let's say that people have to have dinner between 6:30 and 7:30. Like give them a little bit of time. my mom has dinner at 9. So if I say that we're going to have dinner at 7, it's not going to work. There's certain religions, like Muslims, my mother-in-law is from Lebanon, they do Ramadan. Doesn't matter when I say, let's go and have dinner. They're not going to have dinner until it's time, right? So think about this. When we talk about defining applications, what is a component? We have to be aware of that. What is it that we can define? I use a particular language. I talk about components, which you can translate as services or applications or APIs or targets, and context. Context is the environment, the classes, with the thing where you want to do it. You want to deploy your application into a context. So component, things that we run, context, environment, class, blah, blah, blah. Target, how we transform things. Like if you have to go to have dinner with your friends, you're going to dress up in a particular way. You're going to behave in a particular way. You are the same component. The context is the restaurant with your friends. The target is what you're going to wear. If you're going to go to see your mother-in-law, this is going to change. Probably. You're not going to go dress and do and behave the same way that you do it with your friends. So this is the main issue we have with platforms, not knowing. People do not know. Let me do an exercise with you. Why is Kubernetes so complex? Wild guess, anyone? Let's do an exercise. I like this. So for example, if we get WordPress, right? How many settings do we have in WordPress? How many do you think that we have, Forrest? Say a number. 40, almost. What about in Kubernetes? If we have to deploy this in Kubernetes, how many do you need? How many can you touch? Let me show you. So we can run this command here. 291. If you want to know the ones with WordPress, you can use DLD, and we can run this command. 55. Now, think about this. Configuring my application, 55 attributes. Deploy my application, 291. It's almost 5.3 times. So let me tell you a little story. In Docker, we do hackathons every quarter, and I had this idea about how to solve the problem of the expertise and the teams are distributed, the problems are local. So I came up with this idea. I call it Docker Flex. I cannot show you because internet and things, but this is basically what it does, right? This is what I built in one day. It was not even one day, but how can I do it? And I win, by the way. How can I do it? How could I build so many stuff so quickly? With friends, coffee, and automation. There's something we call golden paths, right? And it's a bunch of things that we can use to go fast. I have this little tool that I built. I can show you. If the demo codes are good, I'll be able to show you. Up. So I'm going to create an application that is a Go application, is an API. I have some code. Hello, Dilexia, my friend. So it's an API. It's something very simple, right? Then I can do things like, for example, I can add what I call targets, right? I'm going to add 2 targets, one for dev, one for staging. And now I do a do build. And in all these things, what happens is I created a Docker file, a Docker compose. And a bunch of charts, right? And the charts that I have are slightly different, because one is for production, the other one is for dev, right? Are they different? Yeah, security, right? All these things happen without me having to do anything. I just use my tool. My tool generates my code, adds the targets, and builds. And creates all the things that I need to create. I don't need to worry. I can build and deploy really fast. Right? That's the idea of a golden path. Now, a lot of people think it's like, can you give me the tool? Like, the tool, if you work like me, it's going to work. If you don't work like me, it's not going to work for you. Because the tool does nothing. It's about the template that you use to generate all this. Like Docker init is very similar, right? It's just part of the story. I work with Kubernetes a lot, so I had to extend it a little bit and use Helm and all these things. It's important to understand what we're doing is simplifying my job. Can I do it by hand? Yes. Do I want to do it? No. So if you provide the golden paths and the platform engineering is doing it, they will become the bottleneck. You cannot own, if you own the golden path, you have a problem. You have to enable people to do it, right? It's about helping them to do it. You're not running the marathon. You're helping them to run. Empower all the users. That's what we have to do. So let's talk about how did we end up here? History. So we have devs and ops. Right? Like many years ago, I was in the 5th floor development and 4th floor operations. We did not talk to each other. Then we did DevOps, because, you know, let's work together. Then we changed our title, get a pay rise. Thank you. Thank you, recruiters. And then again, we changed our name, our role, and got a pay rise. Thank you. And we start talking about platform as a product. And what do we mean by that? What is the idea of the product, right? How we say that we end up here? Like, the idea of DevOps was to remove friction. How are we doing it? Do we think that we're doing a good job as a DevOps engineers, removing all the friction? So we create a whole bunch of new interfaces and new abstractions and automations. And the problem is that the people who have to use it don't understand them. Communication is hard. I'm sure that you know this. Communication in a team, if you increase the size of the team, increases really fast, right? So let's say, like, this is a classic SDLC, like the life cycle of software and so on. What is missing? What do you think is missing, Angel? Come on. You don't know, okay. You know, this is very good, but we have to run things. We have to patch. We have to be on call. We have to do all these things that people usually forget. And then you have this idea of teams that they build it and they run it. And they do, but it's more or less like this. You can change the size of the squares and move them a bit, but it's really difficult to have a whole red square in a team that covers the whole cycle. Right, so how do we do it? What do we do? So we build a platform. Hey, we have now a contract that defends these little squares. I don't need to have all these things covered in red. We can delegate. And that cognitive load that we have end up with all these problems. We have broken or rigid golden paths. people have like, this is the template you have to use. If I give you my D2 tool with all my templates, it's not going to be very useful because it works for me, right? That is, you have to be able to change it, right? Lack of environment parity. Why do we want parity in the environments? Why do we want to have production and development very close to each other? Just to understand the control, like the entropy, right? Can we have development and production the same? We could, in theory. What is a much better model? What if we can have all the relationships mapped and we know how things transform from one context to the other? IC coverage and recreating infra with confidence, gaps in telemetry and observability. Let's not talk about documentation. Let's accept we do not write good documentation, right? So what we know, building infra is hard. Maintaining applications, painful. Knowing what people want, super hard. We get saturated with requests, and like, okay, you want me to do this? I'm going to do it. We stop thinking about what is the real issue we have here. So these are the 4 simple rules of how to build a platform and keep your sanity. You have to be able to compose, you have to be able to reproduce, you need a lot of automation, and you have to be flexible. Be water, my friend. I should put it here like that, damn. So I have a few rules when I have to define a platform. Well, like the first one is we don't say no. How many of you have been working in a place where the infra or the platform engineer or whoever is like, yeah, we would like to do it, but we cannot do it because whatever. I have this need, but you cannot do it. The other thing is defining interfaces, the contours that I talk about, right? And allow them to extend them. Make sure that the contract that you define or the API contract you define is something you can extend. And make sure you have a standard process, because when you have a standard process, what happens is the cognitive load decreases because you know what to expect. You have never done something, but you know how things work in this place, so you have certain expectations, and that helps a lot. Automation, automation, automation. And understanding that we have this world where we have producers and some other people are consumers, and usually it's different. Right? Like the number of people who write a Docker file and the number of people who do Docker run is very different. Right? Like Docker debug, that we have a session in an hour, I think. Docker debug tackles this problem, making understandable the consumers and the producers. We shrink the difference between them. The cognitive load now is reduced. And the other thing that we do is when you define a contract, hey, this is how we're going to operate. I'm going to define this API. Are you happy with the contract? Yes, okay, I'm going to implement it. You cannot tell me as a user how to implement the contract. For example, if we have an API to build clusters, we can agree on which kind of parameters and things you need to give me. You cannot tell me, but I want you to run Terraform, or Pulumi, or Crossplane, or, do it like Kelsey, the hard way. It's very important, because what you're doing is like the contract is good for me. I don't need to leak any kind of. So you can have an IDP, right? And as a user, I want to, this is in Backstage. If you don't know Backstage, this is Backstage. You can have a way like, I chose Spring. I like Pokemon. Like Spring Boot service, I chose you. And so you go and create the service, the application, just with a few clicks, right? That's great. I don't need to know my commands. You can do it with Backstage. Or we have a cluster, and then as a developer, you're going to give me these classes using GitOps and all this stuff, but I don't understand these things. I just want to do kubectl apply and then just keep going. Is it okay? Yes, it is okay, because we don't say no. Right? Like what happens is like this developer doesn't know how to do things our way. The platform has to help the developer to come, darling. I'm going to help you. Right? Like we need to teach them. We need to do something so they go from doing kubectl to defining hand releases for flags or Argo CD applications or whatever thing that we want to do. because they don't know, because they don't have time to learn, because they don't really care. I remember in a place that we were running Chef, and the DevOps guy was there, like adamant that the Ruby developers had to learn Chef. You know? What do you think that happened? What happened next will surprise you. They did not learn Chef. So, platform engineering is more close to user experience than infrastructure. While in my experience, we talk a lot about infra, Terraform, Pulumi, self-service, blah, blah, blah. It's more about how the users can interact with my service, how easy for them is to understand what's going on, how I can help them, right? Self-service is not about limiting and reducing options. It's not about setting constraints. It's about defining a set of defaults. It's about going fast. We want you to go fast. Just do this. Of course, you have to make assumptions. That is okay, as long as they understand, right? Again, remember, separate the implementation from the interface. It is okay to have something manually happening underneath. You need to validate the interface is the right one. Now, anyone who has dealt with infra, we know that the fact that you don't know something doesn't mean that you will not have to do it. I'm talking about the fact that you do a backup doesn't mean that you don't know how to do a restore. If you don't know how to do a restore, you don't have a backup. So when we build the platform, we build the platform to do more. No, the other way. You don't build a platform to do more. Like, we build a platform for you to do less. We want to offload all these things to the platform. By all these things, I mean creating infra, or creating the Git repo, setting security constraints, all the stuff that I don't want to do. So you want to focus. What is the problem? I have ADHD, I cannot focus. Haha. This is the problem. Because when you define your platform, you're basically setting a whole bunch of constraints and dependencies. How easy it is for people to learn your services, right? Like your platform becomes a dependency. How easy it is for them to manage these dependencies, right? Like, and the constraints, implicit and explicit constraints. How easy it is for me, if you have a service and I just call your service and then, let's say they're creating a cluster, for example. I call your service and the service fails. So you cannot create a cluster. That happened to me. They gave me a model like, you want to create a cluster, just run this Terraform. Okay, I'm going to run my Terraform. Did not work. Because the Terraform works only in US West, East. In US. Anyway, I was in the EU, right? So it was not working. I didn't have a way of understanding that there was a constraint. That was hidden, right? Like, if you have a constraint, you have to surface that. Make your constraints explicit so the user can know, like, actually, you cannot do these things in this place. Now, if you go and ask a developer, what do you need to do to run your app? It's very simple. You know, build, ship, and run. If you ask SREs, platform engineers, and DevOps, what you have to do to run your app, they come with a very long list of things because, you know, life. So yes, there's all these things. It's like, context is important. You have to know if you're deploying to production, if you're deploying to staging, and so on, right? So we can say that platform engineering is the new DevOps, right? And DevOps was about removing friction. This is it. This is how they sold the movie to us. And this is us. It's bad. It gets worse. It's the same principle. It's called friction. So I've gone super fast because I couldn't show you something because it's broken, but In summary, we have these issues, right? Like we're dealing with platforms like this. The wrong scope is people not knowing or having unrealistic expectations. So are we doomed? Is this the future of platform engineering, DevOps and SRE? Are we always going to feel like? Not really, but it takes time. But building a platform is something that requires time, patience, and a lot of coffee. Thank you. We have lots of time, so if you want to ask questions, I'm happy to take questions. And if not, we can go and have lunch. There's a microphone, so I can repeat the question if I can hear you. Did you hear me saying that I have ADHD, I cannot remember things? Let's see. This one? The automation of the things? No, flexibility. Just like the flexibility is important. You know that you will have an exception. You will know that doesn't matter what you do, you will have to change it. Someone will come with something will be bigger or slower or faster or square. And so you have to plan for this. If you don't plan for this, they will force you. So, any other questions? Thank you.